Welcome, Living Your Life Without Limits family. This is Shannon Jackson, your resident host. We are live in my new studio. So please come on in to Living Your Life Without Limits. I have a special guest with me tonight that we're going to be talking about a very important topic titled Healing Through Infidelity. I want you to get on the phones and get on your texts and anybody that's struggling or hurting and have had some struggles or questions regarding this topic. We have an expert that is joining us. And I want to welcome our expert, Angela Bolen. Angela Bolen is a licensed marriage family therapist who also has extensive training in trauma with cognitive behavioral therapy certification, as well as sexual assault, trauma stress, and has extensive background working with people in the area of addiction recovery and sexual issues and concerns and healing. Angela, thank you so much for joining us at Living Your Life Without Limits, lending your expertise and talented on this very, very important subject. We are honored to have you this evening.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. Yes, it's a very important topic that's probably not talked about enough, so thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to bring this topic out. There's been so much in the news trending with various personalities that have had issues with infidelity, as well as people that I know personally have had some pain and hurt around the subject matter. And I thought it's time to bring it to the family and have some serious discussion and bring some expertise in. So I want everybody to know we have a couple of prepared questions that we're going to dive into, but this is also your opportunity to ask, to text in to either the YouTube channel, we will pick up your questions, or through Facebook and ask questions directly so that we can get the answer. So we're going to open up space for that as well. But my first one that I have for you, Angela, is in your professional experience, what are some of the common reasons why people step outside relationships? Because it's becoming more common than not. And oftentimes people say, I love him or I love her, but yet there's indiscretion.
Yeah, absolutely. None of us are immune to it. As we know, supermodels experience infidelity. And I think the question of why is there are so many whys. I think that the better question is how, and I feel like it starts with even just our culture and understanding, what marriage can and can't do for people, right? It's a balance always of creating your best individual self and then bringing that into the relationship. And when we first start dating or courting, there's a chemical process that happens called limerence that really kind of floods us with the feel good feelings. And we have kind of this illusion of sameness, right? So you hear people say, oh, I found my soulmate. And they'll go through, even premarital counseling, and they can't fathom that they're ever going to disagree about money or sex. Well, what happens over time is that chemical wears off, and all of a sudden you're two different people. So the work of love moves from the heart, where it's kind of easy and illusion of sameness and passion, to your hands, where it's about intimacy, into me see, which is having to hold space to understand your person and talk about your needs and be able to appreciate the difference. So passion is kind of the fast food of love, right? There's no substance there. In fact, I don't think intimacy can really bloom in that environment. It's when you move into intimacy that you really start to have to do a little bit of the work of love. And I don't think our society does a really good job of preparing us for that, right? So what I'll hear when people come in is, he didn't make me happy, he didn't give me enough sex, etc., etc. Well, okay, so that gives me an idea of where we're starting from. You give somebody else your happiness baton, you're giving them something that they were never made to carry. So
Hmm.
those are just a few of the thoughts on why or how people get there.
Interesting you said that, you giving them your happiness, because a lot of times what I have find is that at the moment when you're tipping out, it's all exciting, it's fun, you know what I mean? It's woo, you know what I mean? It's the secret of it. It's the, stepping out and, feeling like you're free, or alter ego type thing. So all right. So another one that came up that was asked of me, and I added it. It says, when infidelity is involved, many people struggle, and if they should end relationships or should they say. What advice would you offer someone? Because that is true. Sometimes, it's a big picture. You look at it and you say, well, I've been in this 20 years, and or 10 years, or even 1 year or 2 years. I'm invested, whether financially, emotionally. We built a family, we built things, but this hurts me. Or some people just pick up the bag and say, I'm out. Um, Sometimes people are torn because everyone comes in with their opinion on whether you should stay or not stay. So for a person that's struggling, how do you advise them to process what to do? Not necessarily giving them what to do, but to process to make the best decision for them in that situation.
Yeah, so that's a pretty common thing where people come in and they're not sure what to do, and they're getting advice from well-meaning people. But remember that
Hmm.
those people can't live your life for you. So it's the package of marriage. By the time you're 20 years in, you have kids and finances and
Exactly.
houses, and so I think, also remember that we're talking about an attachment bond. So, humans are meant to be in relationship with each other. So
Right.
when you find out that your co-creator in meaning hasn't been co-creating the narrative you thought, you need to give yourself some time to be able to process that and to understand that it's a trauma. And there's certain things that you're going to go through. So one of the sayings that resonates a lot with partners is they'll go through these periods where it's come here, go away. Where the hell are you going? They're so confused about the attachment bond part of it. And so, well, my advice is really to give yourself time
Hmm.
and go on a journey. And it's really a journey back to yourself and being
Hmm.
able to really process the trauma and take some time. I mean, I tell people, 6 months before you're even going to consider making decisions, because you got to
Hmm.
kind of figure out what's going on. And then remembering that now more than ever, it seems like the new scarlet letter is staying. So where the pressure might have been 10 years ago when the movement was, it's all about me, and, you know,
Hmm.
building your voice. Now women actually feel more guilt over staying. And so being able to talk with them about, hey, no, all these people that are mean well, they're not going to be in your lives every day to figure out how you want to work with this, right? So just
Correct.
really giving them permission to take some time and get the narrative, to understand what's happening to them, to let their person figure out what's going on for them. Also
Hmm.
to see how, what is their person going to do? Is their person actually going to do a deep dig to find out why they stepped outside of the relationship?
Hmm.
And giving them time to see how are they going to empower themselves when they're vulnerable from now on. Are they going to lean in and try to grow and learn and connect? Or are they going to
Hmm.
stay with those behaviors where they're leaning out of the relationship? Right. So
Hmm.
just giving
Hmm.
themselves the gift of time.
I think that's excellent, because oftentimes, initially, everyone takes an emotional stand, right? You react on emotion. So, and as we get older, I remember an old saying that my godmother used to tell me: never make a permanent decision when you're emotional. step away from it
Yep.
and kind of let the dust settle before you make a permanent decision one way or the other, something great, something not so great, when you're so emotionally connected, so you can look at all sides of it and take it out of the emotion of it. So I like that as great advice. So this segues me into another question before we open up to see if any of the people that are on have any questions that we want to look at. Um, Oftentimes what happens with people that have dealt with infidelity is it becomes the person that was cheated on self-esteem issues, whether it's male or female. What's wrong with me? Are they, is he, what is he doing that I'm not doing? Or what is she doing? Or what does she have that I don't have? So everyone begins to look at themselves as the problem. Oftentimes, what I have found in my professional experience, and I know you know way more being certified in this, it has absolutely nothing oftentimes to do with you at all. It's something going on
Yeah.
with the individual. But
Yeah.
how do you help a person overcome or prevent them from slumping down to self-esteem issues because a person cheated on them? They feel, I've done everything. I've been loyal. I've been faithful. I've done this. I've gone above and beyond. I've been 10 toes down and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yet
Yeah.
you still step out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I first start with just explaining to them, the process that's happening to them, because that in and of itself can make them feel a little shaky. And once they get that
Mhm.
down, we talk about, one of my favorite authors, Stephen Stasny, talks about the hurt is this perceived loss of value, right? And so um, partners have to take a journey with that. And I think self-esteem, right? Self-esteem in and of
Mhm.
itself is just a story. It's a narrative, and you can choose to believe it or not. I think what I try to get the women to do is move to self-acceptance, which is more about compassionately um, learning who you are, all your strengths and all your weaknesses, and really doing work on your core values. So we really work to get to that place of self acceptance, moving away from self esteem, because self esteem is something other people give us, and it's just a story, and we actually can't maintain that long term, right? Because
Mhm.
we know society, right? They're fickle. One minute you're up,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
down. And the other little saying I have is, people don't affair up, right? So when you're acting outside your value system and you're stepping outside the marriage, that's not your best self. And it's certainly not connecting with anybody else's best self. Um, so talking with partners about that. And again, it's hard for a while because everything is just triggering, right? But being able to say to
Mhm.
them, when you lay your head down at night, who are you, right? And you can't be responsible for your co-creator stepping outside,
Mhm.
but you know
Mhm.
that you were there. And let's start
Mhm.
building on that, and let's start building some self-acceptance, and let's start living out your values. So that's how I start.
It, and that's equally for women and men. Do you find that sometimes men, because everyone assumes it's always the male that's stepping out versus the female? So men also struggle. I think it could even be more traumatic for men at
Oh,
times.
absolutely, Shannon. That's a great point. In my practice, I have my clinical certified partner specialist, and I'm also a sex addict therapist associate. So I kind of have both different sides of things, and we're starting to see an increase in male partners, meaning that the wives have stepped outside of the marriage, and I think a lot of the things that they go through are similar, but there's not as many resources, and
Mhm.
they have to kind of deal with what society, like the societal pressures and the toxic.
Almost like a taboo or something. It's almost accepted that men do it, and then it's almost like, how dare you if you're a female that do it?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
how dare you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I really do get that. Yeah. Yes.
Uh-huh.
But I do think
Interesting.
that the men go through, a lot of the same experiences. They
Uh-huh.
just have less support. But I know that there's a lot of professionals looking at that. So
Excellent. Excellent. So, what do you recommend to start the healing process? Because that's what I want to leave. Living Your Life Without Limits is about motivating, educating, and inspiring people to go forward. And sometimes it's going forward when there's been pain. So, how first for an individual and then couples that have, decided, okay, it happened, but we want to try to make it work. How do you recommend first individual heal and what steps for a couple to take to go into healing?
yeah, so I'm really lucky. The clinic I work in, we kind of take all of those different angles in. So we get each person with their individual therapist, and then we have a couple therapist. We
Great.
also offer groups. So I actually run women's groups and men's groups. And that's another really healing experience when you can actually speak your pain to other women that understand you or other men that understand you in a safe space, and be with a therapist that's sort of directing that work that you do together. I think that that's a phenomenal way to start. Finding therapists that are trauma sensitive. So you want to really make sure you don't go to a therapist and they try to blame you for your person's acting out, right? That's a big red
Mhm.
flag, because um, I know that there are circumstances where marriages maybe were volatile, but it's never an excuse to act outside the marriage. So finding, maybe a marriage and family therapist, um, somebody that you really connect with. So I think that that's the first step for your individual healing, and then working on a plan to do some couples work, whether that's initially just discernment work to figure out what you want to do. I
Mhm.
love Living and Loving After Betrayal by Stephen Stasny is one of my go-to books that I give partners to say, hey, let's start here. Take this book and read it and tell me what resonates with you. That's a good place to start.
Mhm.
Um, there's also a website called The Fair Recovery that puts out some amazing work that's partner sensitive. So sometimes I'll get them started with articles on that website. So those are some of my initial thoughts on how you just sort of get out of the starting gate, really understanding the trauma that's happening to you and the attachment breach that's happening to you, and what are some tools that can help you start moving forward.
I also think adding, and then I want to open it up if there are any questions, Living Your Life Without Limits family. This is your opportunity before we sign out. Either send us a question through Facebook that you answered or on YouTube. We are on both live. And then send me a shout out and tell me how you like the new studio. And congrats to Barry for helping with the design of the studio. Barry's my engineer and producer and does an amazing job. So one thing that I wanted to add to what all the wonderful things you said is that you got to approach it with an attitude of forgiving, not forgetting, but I think you have to have some reconciliation of forgiving to start the process too. Do you not agree with that? Because if
Oh,
if I'm
yes.
in it and every time something happens, I'm still angry in it, and I'm just in it because we have so many connections. We got businesses, we got kids, and we're just here and we're miserable. That's not really healing. You
No,
understand what I'm saying?
I so
Uh,
do, Shannon. I talk to my
And I've
partner.
seen that where people stay because there's an old song that says it's cheaper to keep her. You know, let me just be
Yeah,
clear.
right.
It's cheaper to keep her because to leave here gonna cost me way too much, and I
Yeah,
don't want to go to jail and kill her. So I'm gonna stay here, but I'm really not happy. And you don't want that. That's not what we're talking about, right? So it
that's
has to be
exactly
true
right.
doing the work and both being committed to the healing process as well as forgiveness of whomever created the
Yes,
the hurt.
yes, absolutely. And one thing that I really work hard with my partners is right away we flip from a victim identity into a healing identity. And part of their work is they have to learn how to package their anger, because anger gives you a quick analgesic effect of feeling strong, but at the end of the day, it's going to rob you of your core value. So you have to do that work for yourself. That's the gift that you give yourself and potentially the relationship. Whether
Hmm.
you if you've brought little humans into this world, you have to be a co-parent. And so you are so right. The Book of Forgiving by Desmond Tutu is one of my favorite books that I ask my partner
Yes.
to read. And it's very in line with the process. Is first you have to know
Yes.
your narrative, you have to tell your story, and then you have to make
Yes.
a choice to renew or release the relationship. And
Yes. Yes.
if you renew it, you have to have a spirit of compassion and forgiveness.
Excellent. Well said. Are there any questions that came up? Do you see any? Did I miss any before we sign up? We're going to have Angela give us some final thoughts. Any questions came up on Facebook, or I don't see any on YouTube. I see some people on there, but I don't see any questions. Do we have any questions there? LaRonda has a question. What do you see as the most challenging thing about rebuilding your relationship after someone has stepped out? Very good question, LaRonda.
So the biggest thing that I see, Laranda, is that healing from intimate betrayal takes a long time. You're working towards wise trust, and it has to take time. And so part of what happens is partners will have questions, that burning questions, and they happen, rapid fire sometimes. So one of the things that I tell the guys, I try to break it down into little slogans. Repetition equals cohesion. So I think that that's part of it, is understanding that this is not a quick fix, it's slow, and that the partners will have questions for a long time to come. And so the men or the person that stepped out of the relationship has to really do their own work to be able to show up compassionately there. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
long rumble. That's what I would say. It's not for the faint of heart.
Excellent. Well said. Definitely a long haul. Yeah, you both have to be equally committed. Is there any other questions? You see any on Facebook, Mary?
It's asked about communication tools.
Okay.
So I think,
There it
Barry,
is.
I think that I also have my Gottman practicum. I love the Gottman communication tools, how to be a great listener, really learning how to
I
ask
see
I
there
questions
in the
and
back.
get
Got it.
curious. Um, so perhaps you can find a Gottman specialist in your area that can really work on, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Defensiveness, stonewalling, contempt, and criticism. Learning about that.
Excellent. We have one from Anita Anderson. His past, my forever present is okay. His past, my forever present is what is hardest to process? That's a very good question.
Yeah, so Juanita, there's a phenomenal article, if you can get your hand on it, by Anna Fels, Fels, and it's called The Great Betrayal, and it made it all the way to the New York Times. And what she talks about is when your co-creator steps outside of the marriage, they have taken your narrative. So as humans, we time travel. We have the past, we have the present, and we have the future. And what happened is your brain can't make sense that when that Facebook memory comes in from 6 years ago and you find out your husband was at the affair partner's house, you're left to question what was real. And so I think you have to be intentional about getting the narrative so that your brain can make sense of it. And then you have to do work to try to keep yourself in the present as much as possible and build a future that's based on your value system. But that is very hard for people for a long time, is figuring out that bifurcation of their history.
There was a follow-up question that always being cautious. How do you stop doing that? And I think that's a very good one because you want to be there, and then some people get fearful of, okay, I went on vacation, or I'm too busy at work just because of other commitments, or especially if relationship where there's distance in there, right? And something happened. How do you get over continue being cautious? That's an excellent question.
Well, the way that I like to talk about that is you're looking for wise trust. So wise trust is the sweet spot in the middle. And that basically is that your person can show up in stressful situations over time with being able to connect and protect and not be defensive. So for sure, having him get some help, right? So the partner, the male therapist that I work with, make travel plans for their men, right? So they'll say, when I'm out of town, because I used to meet people at the lounge or whatnot, here's my plan, and this is how I'm going to be accountable to you. So I think just getting some good guardrails around that, and because the hypervigilance will hurt you in the end, because honestly, you cannot make somebody be faithful to you. They
Mhm.
have to do the work to keep themselves safe. So I think that what you do is you look for, how do they empower themselves, right? Are they showing up? Are they doing the work? Are they non-defensive? Are they willing to
Mhm.
give you a safety plan if they travel?
Mhm.
Then you can start
Excellent.
to let that vigilance down.
Here's another great one that came up. How would you say it affects someone who witnessed this in their childhood? How does it impact their own relationship? Another very good question.
Yeah,
Because a
so
lot of times people pattern themselves off of what they saw. So I thought that was an excellent question coming in.
absolutely, yes. Some of the work I do with clients is we actually do the adult attachment interview together, because I want to find out about how they grew up. And so you're so right. We take that with us. I think the biggest unfortunate part is that when partners go through the trauma, they pull inward, and so they're not connecting with their kids. So I try to help them with that right away. Like, okay, this infidelity's already taken this from you. Let's try really hard to be mindful. And I think that it does impact um, children. And I think being able to talk about it, being able to get some help from a therapist, um, because I unfortunately I do see that sometimes where, people will say, I'm never going to be in a relationship with someone who cheats on me, and then it ends up happening to them, right? So then they have all this other grief around, oh, how was I fooled by this? So
Mhm.
typically thinking
And also it's really recognizing that this within themselves can be a trigger when they get adulthood because they experience that. And I think understanding that as an adult, how that made you feel to witness that, to see that, and saying, I don't want to recreate this. So let me kind of reprogram myself because I saw mom or dad go through this or whoever it was in my younger years and how that impacted our family or impacted me personally or impacted the loved one that had gone through that, and trying to reprogram what you hadn't, to not repeat the behavior is what I want to
yeah,
say.
yeah. So
So
if you can
uh,
find an attachment specialist therapist, they can
okay.
take you through that. And
So an attachment specialist therapist will be excellent. Somebody expertise in that.
yes,
Okay.
because the saying is, it's not what happened to you, it's how you come to make sense of what happened to you. So
Okay.
just going through that work to speak it out loud to somebody, and then you'll start to integrate it, right? And they say secure relationships have four components: being seen, soothed, safe, and secure. And so doing
Mhm.
some digs on what that means, and how do I now show up in my relationship where I've had this really costly experience, but I
Mhm.
really want to get it right. And so you start
Excellent.
becoming the hero of your own story, and you do the work.
Excellent. Here's a question that came up. Are there any things that we should know or to do to get through the first few weeks after the big reveal of them cheating? Should we even be around each other? Yeah, that's a good one, except for putting a bat on somebody's head or knocking somebody out or moving some
Oh,
furniture. We don't want to do that, right? But we want to do it, but we don't need to do it. So, what is it that we should do instead of
yeah.
becoming reactive in this moment?
Yes, yes. This is a huge, big, important question. So really knowing that there's stages to this. The first one, and they model this around rape victims. So
Mm,
this is a big, intimate betrayal, they say, is the hardest emotional trauma you can go through besides the death of a child. So first of all, knowing that this is an attachment trauma for you. And the first stage is called shock and protest. So you will
mm,
go through crying, weeping, sobbing. You'll have somatic body things that happen to you. You'll, forget to eat. You'll forget to sleep. It's really hard because remember that come here, go away, where the hell are you going? That
mhm,
also happens because what you're having to figure out is my attachment is jeopardized right now. So even though it's a
mhm,
strange thing that they've hurt you, they're also your person. So you want to be comforted by them. And then you'll get hit by grief, and then you just, you want them 6 miles away. So I think that first stage, really just being compassionate with yourself because you are in shock and protest. And then
What's
the
this?
next
What's the other three? Yeah.
So the next stage is intense grief. So that's where, I know you had Christy on talking about grief.
Yes. Yeah.
And similar, confusion, poor memory, lack of interest, loss of energy. You're having to grieve the narrative, right? The white picket fence story that you thought you had.
Mhm.
I get Boy Scout leaders that come in, right? No one would have ever imagined this was going to happen. So you have to go
Right.
through, in addition to the trauma, now you have to grieve. And then the last stage is the reorganization. So that's where you start to dive back into life. You're doing some work and you're integrating. But that first week is really, really hard.
So the question is, do you stay or do you go, or it's really based individually on each situation? And someone said sometimes you do need to move some furniture around. Just gotta get it out.
And I'm all over that. Just make sure the foundation gets fixed first, right? And you can move all the
Exactly.
furniture you want after that, but make sure you fix that foundation.
Fix the foundation, especially if you're going to stay. Well,
Yes, yes.
excellent. All right. Is there any other questions that have come through? No one said they love the new studio. Come on, family. We put some work in this.
Mhm.
All right. I want you to leave us with some final thoughts before I give any final thoughts. And I want to thank you for being on again, providing your expertise in this sensitive manner. And I know sometimes it's even hard for people that may be listening to even form their questions. So, for those of you that may have questions that didn't really want to put them out there for whatever reason, and you can send us something privately through our email, text, but we can definitely get that information over to Angela. And we will also have her information posted on our YouTube channel when it posts on Saturday, because this will replay for those didn't reach us today. But Angela, what are your final thoughts that if you were to leave one thing for the people that have tuned in today and going forward, tuning in to help them with the healing process, what would be that one thing you want them to take away from tonight's subject? Because that's what it's all about, healing through infidelity.
I guess what I'd like to say is that, at the clinic I work at, I'm so blessed to be able to work with men and women and couples. And I intentionally did that to keep balanced. And so what I'd like to remind people is that it's hard to imagine coming through a crisis like this with a silver lining, but I see it. I'm blessed to witness people um, be able to walk through literally what feels like the gates of hell and come out the other side, and just build lives that they never, even imagine that they could have. And the marriages, there is, like you said, Shannon, forget, no, forgive. Part of forgiveness is letting go of hope for a better past. So if you can figure that out, your person does the work. I see people come out with marriages that are worth the rumble.
Absolutely. Well said. I want to leave this final thought and kind of piggybacking on this. Infidelity is painful, no matter who it is, whether it was somebody that was a short term that you trusted in or something that you've been in for many years and it all of a sudden happens. And the best medicine is that to, as the doc, as Angela had said, is take a step back, breathe, and don't own what is not yours. So you can own the process in the relationship, but don't own what is not yours and allow that to affect your self esteem and how you view yourself. And don't allow you to stop loving yourself. Heal and you got to forgive. And the forgiveness is not necessarily so much for the individual, but it's certainly for your own health and mental wellness. So, despite everything, whether you stay or whether you go, you please want to exercise forgiveness to continue to live a mentally and emotionally healthy life. And again, once again, I thank my esteemed guest, Angela Bolen, for bringing her expertise and professionalism. And for all of you that have signed on tonight, our first live episode, I'm very excited as we're going to bring you more information. And remember to follow us on our YouTube channel. Visit our Feel Good Shop. We got some new exciting things that will be coming out into the Feel Good Shop. If you haven't checked out our website, we have free resources on our website. Mindful meditation, free health and educational videos, blogs, all sorts of things. Our event page to let you know what's going on with me and where we are and what we're doing. And as I always do when I get ready to sign off, remember to love yourself. Take care of yourself. Because guess what, family? You are absolutely worth it. Thank you for joining us for this special presentation of healing through infidelity. And look forward to seeing you soon. Have a wonderful evening. Signing out now.